Hello viewers, today I'm at Kigali. This is a very beautiful country, that's Rwanda, attending these African food systems. So basically it's just a conglomerate of people who are coming together to find solutions to these issues of smallholder farmers. And as you know that Africa heavily relies on agriculture, and 80% of the population actually does subsistence farming that feeds the nations. So we are here to meet like-minded partners, that's the NGOs, funding partners, smallholder farmer representatives, the government, and everyone that has a stake in making agriculture a better place. I promise that I'll be very vigilant to bring you the real information about what's happening in the farming regime in Africa.
Africa Food Systems under the theme Innovate, Accelerate and Scale, delivering food systems transformation in digital and climate era.
Stay tuned to the end. Thank you.
Higher productivity also means lower food prices for consumers, which has a direct impact on poverty and inflation.
Artificial intelligence, machine learning, and augmented reality have transformed the way we work and are now essential tools in building more nutritious food systems.
Digital tools also include radio, TV, WhatsApp. It's so much more than what we traditionally think of.
On nutrition and healthy diets, it's really a crucial element in improving the welfare in the world. So these are really large.
We're entering a period in the world's history when there will be more young people living in Africa than anywhere else.
These young folks are working with research that is grounded in the work of smallholder farmer families.
Women's Award or Female Award this year will take home the grand prize of $50,000 is Fatima El Kou. She is the founder and CEO or Head of Research and Innovation for Yafifa.
The male winner of the $50,000 prize of the GOGettaz Award is none other than Idris Mohammed.
Dijon, GOGettaz Award winners for 2024.
I tried that. You're laughing at me. Come on, you should give me a celebration for my friends. Thank you.
Later this month, at the United Nations, we will convene in New York for the Summit of the Future.
So the starting point for the private sector to be able to play a role into that is also to look at what environment we are creating to enable a private sector to flourish and work in that. I love you, Africa.
Africa's agri-food system are some 33 million hard-working smallholder farmers, among them youth and women. They are the largest segment of farmers who strive to feed our continent and beyond. However, they continue to face challenges. Action to transform our food systems in the face of shocks is not advancing at the speed or scale required. 1 in every 5 people on our continent are projected to be facing chronic hunger. We continue to lose agricultural land to degradation and unsustainable agricultural practices. External shocks have raised the cost of food. We continue to experience low yields and grapple with poor quality inputs. And to add to all this, we are now truly experiencing the impact of climate change. Today, Southern Africa is going through one of the worst droughts ever. Zimbabwe has lost 70% of their maize crop yield because of a scorching heat wave, the first ever in 40 years. Farmers in Western Africa are grappling with a delayed rainy season. We know that transforming our food systems will grow a resilient and sustainable agri-food sector, create jobs, and ensure food and nutrition security. We know that we need stronger intersectoral and interministerial coordination. Development and technical partners are aware of the need to coordinate, align, and harmonize support. We also need to truly deliver on including our youth and women in food systems. Now we move with urgency, and this is why we thank you for being part of the AFS Forum community. At the core of the Forum's theme this year is accountability. We will continue to set the continental agenda on food systems transformation. We will continue to reform our policies and produce enough food and locally. We will create more jobs for youth and women across the food systems value chains. We will attract more investments through public-private philanthropy and producers' partnerships. We will provide a platform for businesses to thrive. We are going to exchange knowledge with those that are making progress and commit to implementing successful transformation strategies. We will create meaningful connections and partnerships. We are going to hold ourselves accountable to innovate, accelerate, and scale the delivery of food systems transformation in a digital and climate era. Welcome to AFS Forum 2020.
Global share of arable land and food basket corridors, it is a strategic position to cement a global leadership in agriculture and agribusiness and become the food and agribusiness center of the world.
Us promoted him and created a national chaos.
I commend the choice of this year's theme, Innovate, Accelerate, and Scale.
We have reached this year, speaking of the food sufficient ratio, Africans consume 1.3 billion tons of food per year.
And finally, for businesses, we have a message. Be you small, be you medium, be you large, our message is to dialogue and coordinate with government and farmers to push single-mindedly for government investment in hard and soft infrastructure of the 4 types that we noted.
We celebrate you, the private sector. We see you, MSMEs. You are not missing. You are just hidden.
The MasterCard Foundation does is through our partners. You know, what we've seen work really comes from how the solution is developed. And what I'm referring to is this notion of co-creating the solution. And this is really part and parcel of everything the MasterCard Foundation believes in.
Côte d'Ivoire is the first global producer of cashew, but also its production has more than doubled over the last decade.
IITA, a few years ago, we went ahead and established an institution called Business Incubation Platform Limited.
The studies show that the investment in research has many times the return on investment. It's one of those
through concessional capital, of course. You lower the cost of capital, it makes it a little bit easier for institutions to invest or lend more profitably.
I have worked extensively in the dairy sector, and in Kenya's dairy sector we saw that in the beginning those who became processors were actually all farmers who needed a way to collate their milk and bring their milk together, and now some of the biggest private sector producers, that's how they started, 5-10 farmers.
I'd like to congratulate the government of Kenya. The government of Kenya has been a pathbreaker, a leader in saying we want to know how many of our resources in our budgets are going to food systems.
The number of hunger is increasing. We are not on the track to achieve the SDG 2. SDG 2 was meant to eradicate hunger by 2030. All over the world, this is not achievable. We expect more than 500 million to be suffering from hunger by 2030. The challenge we have in Africa is that the proportion of this, the highest proportion of this number will be located in Africa. So far, we have 20% of the African population suffering from hunger, 1 in each 5 persons.
Reminded that food security is fundamental to the stability and prosperity of any nation.
The AFS for inviting Olam Agri to this forum. Looking in just not for the decarbonization perspective, but really helping improving the productivity, so nature positive, climate positive, as well as livelihood positive goals.
The ecosystem approach, these multi-dimensional partnerships is what is very important, but the focus is eating to live and making the feeding a cycle. Thank you.
But despite the fact that money is not a problem, one thing that I've seen that is a big barrier to access to finance is investor readiness.
We should really ask yourself first, what are the customer needs and what is required to serve that customer need and ultimately drive your vision and purpose, like I talked about the 100 million smallholders we want to serve by 2030.
Of food is happening at the last mile. The smallholder farmers and their communities and the SMEs that work closest to them, who, by the way, create more jobs for most of the people in the continent, right, are the last mile and are faced with challenges that the traditional financial sector considers to be very risky, very difficult to understand, and therefore very not investable.
So what do you think about sustainable finance?
Reflecting Africa's great need, but also its great potential, President Biden launched a US-AU strategic partnership to support more productive and resilient food systems on the continent 2 years ago.
Instead of exporting raw, now it's processed in the raw bags, working with the... You know, so many initiatives talking about youth here, youth there, etc. But nothing is really moving.
The packaging and the branding of products is essential to give them a value. Otherwise, they are just bulk.
Engaging the private sector from the onset is extremely important.
Did the mango innovation with dried mango, because the season is so short, we had to find a solution to that.
For growth and innovation across the continent, as we just have seen, that branding can make all the difference.
In 2023 alone, agriculture was a leading category by deal volume for impact investors in Africa.
There's a lot of policy that looks great on paper, but it never makes it off the paper.
The strategic plan for agriculture transformation, this one is mainly focusing on building sustainable and resilient food systems.
And it's very easy to put in place a mechanism that brings actors together, but it's not as easy to implement it and transform it into action, and we all know that.
Yes, and we have developed a model now that we call the village business unit.
50 billion by 2030. And I remind you that 2030 is in just a bit more than 5 years. On investing in an inclusive, healthy, and
data for the last 5 years, and Kenya spends about 1.4 to 1.8 billion USD on food systems, % on nutrition, and a
record. So currently we can comfortably sit with banks and discuss.
It's the same analysis that we did in Kenya. We're getting a strong analysis. Then here, when you look at, what is the strongest multilateral partners? I mean, I'm not here to promote the World Bank, but
contact. Farmers will go after anything that will double their income.
Sector, $1 invested by IFAD is releasing $5 of private sector investment for all our investments so far.
There's recognition in the US Congress that we need to be investing in the root causes of food insecurity.
Are we putting the money where we get the best returns?
Nutrition, the desperation by young people on the continent when they...
That a healthy soil gives a healthy crop. Healthy crop gives healthy food. When healthy foods are consumed, it gives us healthy people that are productive, and it leads to healthy nation. And
fully support and promote the role of the private sector and business in this regard.
A statement has been really valuable. This is borne out particularly for us in Kakamega County, one of the counties in Western Kenya, where we've been able to partner with the government not only to build a new fertilizer plant, which is great, but also to be able to work with the government to provide, to source feedstock, to be able to make sure that we're able to produce enough organic fertilizer.
Services, you can post them on a specific website. So I did agree with that point, but to add spice to it, I think I'd encourage YPAD, AGRA, FAO, similar organizations that we need to have these sites verified, because how do young people then know this is a site that would call me? So we really need to have the integration between government and private sector so that the marketing of agricultural products online is verified, and actually also the companies that are marketing their products there have also been verified. So
a transformative organization that AFA has been, and one of the things I'm proud about is we are an organization that came from cup of milk and moved to cow, and now we are saying we are moving to capital. And how do we want to do that? We are focusing on being a facilitator to market actors.
Jamaica's pretty close. K.
Africa, ordinarily, looking at the vast arable land, supposed to be the food basket of the world. But ironically, Africa tends to host the highest number of people who are starving and who are poorly fed based on the nutrient value of the food we take.
While food systems are the first victims of climate change, they are also major contributors, responsible for a third of global greenhouse gas emissions.
Where a significant proportion of those who work in food systems are women and young people.
Continent, I found it's much easier to change food products than to change the behaviors of entire populations.
In new ways, the Rockefeller Foundation has funded something called the Periodic Table of Food. It's a new technology platform to really look at food composition.
Make livestock work for improving the environment. We can balance the livestock story to bring the solutions to address some of the challenges that we've mentioned. We are dealing with food system crisis, climate change crisis, and the role of livestock in these two crises is very clear.
UNICEF is pursuing a new initiative to improve the availability and affordability of nutrient-dense, local, sustainable foods for children aged 6 to 59 months.
So we worked on the issue of demand for vegetables and working it below the line and above the line marketing strategies for vegetables. And you'll see a lot of food fitty adverts in Kenya that
the future has operated. We've seen stunting actually decline by 20 to 25% in communities where a variety of interventions took place compared to control areas. So something is working.
I believe we need to put the money where our mouth is. Zero hunger is solvable. We're talking about 90 billion a year that it would take to achieve zero hunger in the world until 2030. Now that cost has risen compared to 6 years ago by an overall 40% if we look at the total cost. But if we look at what is 90 billion in comparison to the world GDP, that is 0.1% of the world GDP.
Those of you from the government, make sure that your policies are empowering your women.
Child is raised by a village, which is quite true. But there's another saying that says, educate a woman and you educate a nation. Not a village, not a family, but a whole nation. So that's just how important women are in this conversation of agriculture and agri-food systems.
If you go in the valley in Senegal, where rice is cultivated, most of the work on the field is done by women.
Women involved in technology development, which is 50%
of the world's population, you have 50% more ideas.
Congratulations, congratulations. Atake, Burkina Faso, Caroline Wanjiri Mombo, Wed Whole Food, Kenya. And the winner for this category is Basono Kabore, Florence.
Most of this food imported can be produced locally, such as maize, rice, wheat, oilseeds, and many processed products.
Into African countries, also of export. You could see here that export are perhaps a little bit more evenly distributed regionally in terms of share of global export by African countries to global markets. But imports are quite skewed, driven primarily by what's happening in Northern Africa.
We can continue to have outflow of forex and dependence on somebody else who produces it. The opportunities for private sector is to grow the industry of these three products, because when prosperity happens, the consumption will increase.
But if we all put all of efforts to implement this agreement that came as a package, as I said.
Statistic further, less goes to women and youth at only 7% of the 4 to 6%. We've had this
for more than 8 years now. So, and based on that, key thing was access.
For colleagues, current ministers in agriculture, in finance, in commerce, is to make sure for agriculture that the policies are known, are predictable, are transparent, and long-term for people to invest.
And there is no market linkage that the players within the continent itself, from the local, regional, and continental, we do not know each other, bring together the logistics industries.
One of the ways to really improve sales and trade, to make African products more effective, to give them more value, is by giving them a brand, giving them a name.
Capacity building the small-scale farmers, help them to adopt agricultural practices that help them to cope with the adverse effect of climate change.
It comes to financing these agri-SMEs, only 75% are still looking for financing. There's a $100 billion gap in financing this sector as a whole.
But the things in English, and English is not our first and second, third language. Right. It is bankable, means it's not your English, good English, or it's not good French? Or what does that mean? Thank you.
Is the actual priority of the government to drive agriculture and food systems transformation? What are the outcomes that the government is seeking in terms of farmer incomes, jobs, etc.? And then how are they actually planning to prioritize action around that, which particular value chains?
Regenerative agriculture finally got it that if we want to really to continue producing, and if we want to really hit the resilience, the sustainability, the fact that we produce but we don't damage the environment, got into really that we need to rethink the way we do it and look how much we are producing and how we are producing it. And that's where I think in the last few years, in the last 20, 30 years, we had really a spurge of knowledge and data that explains that agriculture, it's not only a seed and the soil and water, it's beyond that. There is many other things around that makes the production possible or not possible. And the same thing for fishes, the same thing for animals, and so on and so forth.
Is how do we feed 1.4 billion people on the continent?
Our framing of regenerative agriculture is actually produce more, restore more, and scale regenerative agriculture.
Agriculture from a perspective of that food and nutrition security that has been highlighted already. For us and for the last 60 years, we've been working on that we look at it that we focus on locally available resources and we minimize external ones. Yeah? And I think that can
ensure that we are restoring nature and we be able to develop metrics around that beyond just talking about yield in kilograms.
Conservation is more important than restoration. We should promote conservation that puts food on the table and creates income-generating activities to the local communities and farmers.
My name is André de Jager, Director of Technical Expertise of SNV. We are an international NGO working in 24 countries on agri-food systems, renewable energy and water. In the past 2 days, or Monday, Tuesday, we have been discussing the Fertilizer and Soil Health Action Plan and the soil
producers who produce 70% of the food in Africa and 1/3 globally. They are at the forefront of this struggle. They are key to global food security. They are key to food systems transformation, and yet they receive less than 0.8% of climate finance.
So what we've done specifically at the Rwanda Green Fund is we believe in being agile, we believe in coming up with tailored financial solutions. So at the moment, the Rwanda Green Fund, in partnership with our development bank, we launched a private sector a financing facility.
To help governments and communities translate that information into early warning. So for example, in West Africa, we have used that information and shared it with others who are translating that into text messages and radio messages to pastoral communities to help them understand the availability of water in seasonal water basins.
70% of the volume that goes in there is organic waste. We can reuse that. We can reprocess that. And actually Kigali is working on that. Congratulations on that. I think that's a big step forward on seeing how we can.
To end on a women's note, because I feel women are the backbone of this continent.
To all the climate impact that we are facing. And this is the reality of not only my community, but so many indigenous communities around the world. Because we live and depend from the nature. We are the people who are hunter-gatherers, or who are pastoralists, or who are farmers.